Okay, so I wanted to do an update to the last video, the Canadian hours of service versus US hours of service. I have now finished my 2-hour break. So if you remember in the last video, I had done an 8-hour break, and an 8-hour, even though I was in the US, 8-hour break actually gives me full Canadian 13 hours of driving. But I was only able to use what I had available in the US, and that was plenty to get me over the border and be able to switch over Canada. So if you remember from the last video, I had minus an hour 15 or whatever it was. So I could have driven on Canadian and been legal, but the second I got to the border, I would have been out of service for US DOT rules. So now that I've done an 8 and 2, and again, the 2 still messes me up to this day, but thank God for ELDs. Yeah, I know, whatever. I now picked up 6 hours, 46 minutes available for driving in the US. So seeing as how in Brampton, hopefully the 401 is not an atrocious animal today and I can get out of Toronto. That roughly 3.5 hours back to the US border. Should have about 3 hours available, roughly 3 hours, 15 minutes available to drive in the United States to get me to be able to stop and do a 10-hour break and finish my trip. So just wanted to do an update. In this particular case, it was an 8 and 2. So 8 hours I used in the US to get me across the border. Then I switched over to Canadian hours and I had a full 13 hours. But now going back in the US, I'll be able to drive on Canadian hours. When I get to the border, I'll switch back to the US. And as of right now in Brampton, Ontario, I've got 6 hours, 45 minutes. So I'm going to get trucking. Thanks, guys.